Hello, my name is Dr. Sarah Elliott. I'm the Strategic AHP Workforce Lead for Kent and Medway CCG. Apologies that I can't be there in person today, but today I'm going to talk about leadership and a system level approach. So the objectives of today's session is just to give you a brief overview of my career and my leadership journey, talk a little bit about what an integrated care system is, how we can work together, introduce you to the AHP Council, Faculty and Clinical Placement Expansion Programme, and a few top tips for your own career development. So this is my career on a page. Like most, I started with a linear sort of promotion through rotational positions as a junior, a senior 2 and a senior 1, and this is where I show my age, so this was pre-Agenda for Change. I rotated around both acute, community and paediatrics to get a good basis before I specialised in critical care and surgery. It was there I started to expand my wings a little bit in across the 4 pillars of practice. So I started to work around clinical audit, training and started to host student placements. I also began my postgraduate education journey, completing a postgraduate certificate in clinical education. I was then lucky enough to become one of the first extended scope practitioners in the region within critical care, and as one of the first physios to start taking blood gases, request x-rays and start using some simple prescriptions. You wouldn't believe that now, but it was actually quite a big thing back then. But I started also to cement my background around education as well, completing my MA in education. I started to mentor others as well, such as medical students who were starting on their quality improvement journey. It was here, as I started to get more involved in research and education, that I started to present at conferences and started to write papers. I then took a stint out of clinical to do a head of therapies position. It was an opportunity that came up when the previous head of therapies retired, and I did this for a year before I stepped back into clinical work as a consultant physiotherapist. I continued my education route, completing another PG Cert in Professional and Research Studies and eventually completing my doctorate in 2019. This really opened the doors for me in terms of research, becoming a principal investigator on a number of national trials and also hosting my own small in-hospital trials as well. And from there we started to publish more papers, and that led on to becoming an honorary lecturer at the local universities. From there I undertook a Clinical Education Improvement Fellowship, which was a national programme working with HEE, Christchurch University and the Council of Deans of Health, and this exposed me to a wider network of stakeholders and professional bodies and has led me into the position I'm in now as Strategic AHP Workforce Lead, where I oversee the faculty and the Clinical Placement Expansion Programme. The real basis for me was making sure that my career became almost like a portfolio and that I had experience of clinical practice, education, leadership and research. So really consider these 4 pillars of practice as you move through your own leadership journey. So this is just a collection of some of my photos. They look like holiday photos, but I can assure you they're not. It's just to show that there's a wide range of opportunities for people if you stretch your wings a little bit. Like most people, I worked through the pandemic in critical care and actually was probably one of the only physios that enjoyed it. I loved the challenge, I loved how sick the patients were, and I loved the teamwork and morale and the profile that it actually raised for therapies. But I've also been lucky enough to travel the world with my research. I've been to Australia, New Zealand, Amsterdam and Malta, just to name a few. So again, as well as presenting at conferences, you do get a little bit of chance to see the sites. I make sure I try and get all my work out to conferences, and sometimes this doesn't have to be sort of full-blown research, it's just quality improvement projects. But again, you can present posters or you can write papers. The more you do, the more you get exposed, the more you sort of become known, and I was very sort of honoured to be asked to write a chapter in a critical care book. But this is my current role as the Workforce Lead for Kent and Medway CCG. So what does this involve? Well, I look at it as sort of in 3 ways. I'm getting AHPs a seat at the table. I'm becoming your voice. For so long, AHPs have sort of been considered the forgotten profession behind medicine and nursing, but we are the third largest profession as a whole, and we are 15 very diverse professions, so people struggle to understand what we do. So I'm really trying to promote all our different roles and to have conversations with whatever's going on, whether that's within workforce or clinical pathways. And I also work across all organisations, so I feel like I'm a little bit like a conductor. So I'm trying to bring everyone together. What can we do together? How can we work together to streamline and standardise processes? But what do we mean when we talk about a systems approach? So an integrated care system is when all organisations in health and social care work together in a joined up way, and the focus is always bringing benefits to the patient, so making sure they get access to the right services at the right time and at the right location, so whether that's the nearest one to home or in home with the advance of digital and technology. Making sure people with long-term conditions are managed and promoting well-being both for patients and staff. And some of these bubbles are just some of the key priorities that Kent and Medway are working on this year. So an integrated care system is built up of 4 healthcare partnerships. In Kent we have 4. We have Dartford, Gresham and Swanley, Medway and Swell, West Kent and East Kent. And we refer to these as place. The idea is that even though as a county we are quite large, we do have a very diverse population and different needs across the region. So these healthcare partnerships or place will focus on their own particular needs. And then we break that down a little bit further into neighbourhoods, and these are our primary care networks. So these are all your general practices, your primary care, and a lot smaller. As a region, we report into NHS England in a South East, and we have a regional lead, and then she reports into the national programme for us. But what does this mean for AHPs? So my role within the CCG is to try and look at the workforce primarily, although I do get involved in clinical pathways. It's all about the right person in the right place with the right skills. So we look at this across sort of 4 objectives. We want to make AHP a career of choice. So we want to promote people coming into AHPs. And this is where we've got an opportunity to promote those smaller, more vital professions. So we try to get involved in schools, in curriculums, and we're especially sort of working with sort of local colleges around T-levels who are offering health-based courses. We look at increasing capacity for student placements, because obviously it's really important that if we're increasing the people coming into school, into students and career, we need to increase student capacity. So this is where we've created the placement expansion programme, and they're looking at trying to increase placement capacity and diversity, so really promoting diverse placements such as leadership, research and long arm supervision and role emerging placements. Obviously, once these students qualify, we want to bring them into employment and keep them. We have a high attrition rate of people leaving within the first 2 years. So we're looking at bridging the gap between education and employment. We have the Step to Work programme and preceptorship, and we're looking at what else we can do to promote and keep our staff. Obviously, once we've got the staff in place, we want to keep them within the system. We want to grow and develop our own workforce. So we're looking at talent management, we're looking at opportunities to maybe do job swaps or work across organisations, whether that be a sort of secondments between 2 or rotations, and looking at sort of leadership and talent management. Obviously our aims have to align with several sort of key papers, so we align to the long-term plan, the people plan, and we've just had the new AHP strategy that was launched this week, which has just been launched by Susan Rastrick, so that is now available online. We also have to adhere to Health Education England South East objectives and the ICS Core People objectives. But this is how we sort of sit within the CCG. So my role as the lead is to act as chair for the AHP Council. This council is sort of built up of all the AHP leaders across all organisations in Kent and Medway. So acute trust, community trust, mental health, social care and the ambulance service. We also have people from Health Education England, student representatives and our higher education providers sitting on that council as well. It's at this council we decide what our priorities are for the coming year in relation to what we have a need in our region and in alignment with all the papers I've just mentioned. And that council reports both ways. It reports upwards to the regional council and Health Education South East and NHSE and I South East, but they also report downwards to the faculty. So our AHP faculty is funded by Health Education England, and this team are the people that sort of carry out majority of the projects, and I'll look into some of those projects in a moment. We also have the clinical placement expansion team. I also work alongside my other professional leads such as healthcare scientists, pharmacy and advanced practice, because there's a lot of overlap between the work we do. So for example, we'll be launching a research strategy later this year, and that's something we can work on together. I also work alongside my colleagues in nursing and quality. They have the same workforce issues as ourselves, so again we can work together. And then we report into things like the Education Collaborative. We're working together with the local universities, how we can create sort of modules and courses that are more fit for purpose and people coming out into practice, and also what we can do to provide training on a local basis. We're obviously promoting wellbeing from a workforce perspective, and more recently we're getting involved in clinical pathways, whether that be stroke, community rehabilitation and so on. So these are some of the work streams that we're looking at. Within the council and faculty, we're looking at return to practice, how we can have standardised practice across all organisations to make it easier for people to come back, and having a digital campaign to try and find these people out in the community that maybe want to return. We're looking at international recruitment, again from a collaborative perspective, from how we can support them coming both into practice but settling into the community around the pastoral support, simple things like finding accommodation, creating a network of support, helping them with bank accounts and driving licences and things like that. We've launched a SpringPod work experience, which is an online tool that both school-aged children and older adults can complete, and it just gives them a taste of all AHP professions. We've already talked about the Step to Work programme, that the idea with that is they complete it between qualifying at university and starting practice, and helps that transition into practice. And we're obviously reviewing all preceptorship programmes across all organisations. We're trying to create a volunteer network, both for exposing people to AHPs, but from a wider perspective, maybe using certainly from colleges and schools, how we can bring people in maybe to support the digital and greener AHP campaigns. We've launched a support worker network. So this meets on a monthly basis where all support workers are welcome to attend, and it's both a peer support and education network, looking at things like apprenticeships, completing applications, and the next meeting we'll be looking at sort of the EDI aspect. From a workforce, we're supporting people with apprenticeships and looking at how we can support T-level placements and new roles. So looking at sort of Band 5 roles for support workers and clinical academic roles with the local universities. We've recently appointed an EDI lead who will be scoping and creating a strategy, so watch out for a questionnaire heading your way asking these questions. And as we've mentioned, we're getting involved in clinical pathways within primary care, stroke, palliative care and community rehabilitation. The clinical placement expansion programme not only sits across AHP but also works with nursing and midwifery as well, and it's looking to increase the capacity and diversity of placements. We've recently hosted our own student within the CCG who completed a project on how we can approach leadership placements as a system, and she created a set of recommendations that will be published shortly. We're trying to promote the participation of all in student education. If every qualified member of staff took one student each year, we would have sufficient placements for all students. We want to encourage role emerging placements, so creating a database of long-arm educators. And also we want to extend to the private and voluntary sector. This is the AHP strategy that was launched this week. It's been launched at the conference. It's now available online, so it's worth going to have a look at. But my top tips for career development. Work with your team. You can't achieve anything on your own. Utilise the experience and knowledge within the team. Have honest and open conversations with your manager. Utilise the appraisal system and seek opportunities that might be available. Think sideways as well as upwards. Consider developments within role. What can you do across those 4 pillars of practice? Can you participate in audit and quality improvement? Can you be part of a research trial that's happening within your organisation? And seek out funding opportunities, things like professional bodies, Health Education England. Companies often have money available. I was funded to both conduct a research trial, and it funded my trip to Australia from a respiratory company. And things like my professional body helped fund my doctorate. So there are opportunities out there. Network with people, not only within your own organisation, but on a wider level. If people want to get involved within the faculty, please let me know. And I would suggest seeking out a mentor or a coach. And I would, sometimes it's really good to step outside your organisation and also outside your profession. If you don't feel you can do that, then the NHS Leadership Academy, you can apply to have a coach online. And as we said, don't be afraid to change direction. Maybe take a secondment for 6 months, try something else, step out your comfort zone. The more you can build up a portfolio within your career, when that real job comes along that you really, really want, you're going to have that experience, skills and knowledge. And the other thing I would say is make sure you celebrate your successes. As AHPs, we're very good at getting on with things, but we don't shout about it enough. So make sure you get that poster to conference, make sure you present it to the board or present it within your audit teams. Just make sure you get those successes out there. Obviously, I'm not available for questions, but I put my email on the first slide. If anyone wants to get in contact with me or have a conversation with me, please contact me. And on the last slide, which will be sent out to you, there's just a short video about integrated care systems that you can watch in your own time, but it just helps to summarise everything. Thank you for listening.